everybody. We're going to get started here in a couple of seconds for our final session of FET Summer School. When was the last time you attended anything called summer school and you were really looking forward to all the sessions, right? So what we'd like to do is ask a quick question of everybody who's waiting. What's one connection that has been getting you through the pandemic and the social distancing and all that kind of stuff? Is it you have a connection with one of your pets? Is it a connection with one of your family members, a partner, a spouse? But what's one connection that's getting you through things and helping you stay sane and stay on top of things? So Melissa says, my cows. So those of us who are in the dairy industry, or I'm not sure if you have cows for pets, but we'll find out. Ashling says connection with my neighbors. Kiva says supportive colleagues. Melissa says beef. Okay, so we have a clarification on the cows. Maud Baratode says weekly walk with my friend. Oh, that's splendid. I love that. Chris says strong hallucinogenic drugs. I'm going to say maybe don't say that one out loud. And Gary Archer says my family. Brendan says family and neighbors, my dogs, friends, and my husband from Angela. Exercise sessions. A lot of people saying family. Trevor says my dog's beautiful eyes, regular chats with colleagues and friends. And for those of you who are just coming in, Lorraine, you've got the co-host, so you'll be letting people in as they come in.
Yeah.
The question as we're getting ready here is, what's one connection that you have that's keeping you going during social distancing, the pandemic, all the weirdness that's happening these days? Seamus says Liverpool Football Club after 30 years. I'm not sure if after 30 years means they have a winning record or not, but I'm not going to go there. Let's see.
I think, yeah, it's been a long time coming.
Yep. Carolina says my teenage kittens. That's awesome. Friends and family from Mary. Sharon says fresh air. I actually second that one. My thing that's getting me going is being able to go for a long run outside on a regular basis. And Karen says family, and the dog is always under my desk as I'm working at home. Yes, they are our companions and heating pads. And Joanne saying just chatting with my family and friends. I love that. It's kind of funny that Zoom is keeping us together in many ways. Solomon says the internet generally. Yeah, having internet access and being able just to connect in some way is fantastic. Guy says walking every day, friends, family, and colleagues. These are all positive things. I love it. Ross says online chats with my daughter and Zoom with my family in general. Virtual singing. Virtual singing. I'm curious about that one. That's splendid. Good deal. We've got just about a minute left, and for all of you who've just come in, the topic that we're using to get us started is, what's one thing that is a connection for you during social distancing and the pandemic? What's one thing that's helping you to get through, stay sane, and stay motivated? And people are talking about their pets, they're talking about their animal companions, they're talking about friends, family, exercise programs, you name it. So we're happy to have everybody here. And I think we're right here on time. So let's get started. I'll turn it over to Christine.
Okay, well, thank you everyone so much for joining us for the fourth and final session of the FET Summer School. We are so delighted to have you here with us, and it's been marvelous to see some of the feedback and reflections that we're getting from you all. So thank you so much. So first up, we would like to thank Solace and ETBI for helping to fund this event as part of the overall project that we're doing, which is also developing UDL for FET. And you're going to hear a lot more about that from the co-authors, Tom, Tobin, and Anne Heelan, who you'll also hear from later on in the session. So if you just make sure that you mute your mic on when you enter, but we are going to have a particularly interactive session. So if you have a headset or a microphone on your laptop, just make sure that's all working and enabled when we do the breakout sessions a little bit later on. So sorry, my name is Christine Hines. I'm the Event and Outreach Officer in AHEAD, and very pleased to be joining you. I'd love if you could follow me on Twitter. It is very unfortunate that I decided to use the nickname my godmother gave me, but I suppose I wasn't thinking of kind of professional development when I set it up in the first place. But we learn and we grow, and Twitter is a fantastic outlet. And I'd like to introduce Tom Tobin, my co-host.
Thank you, Christine. My name's Tom Tobin. A number of you have been with us for all 4 of these sessions, but if this is your first one, you picked a good one to come in on. I'm the person who wrote a book about universal design for learning, and I've been working with Christine and Dara and Lorraine and all the brilliant folks at AHEAD Ireland for a little while now, and we've put together some documents and ideas to help you to be more inclusive and reach out to your students. So this is going to be a little bit of a different session, as Christine mentioned, from our previous ones, because we want to hear from you about your plans for putting together connections. What are you going to do next? What steps are you going to take? So we're going to be looking forward a lot. And in order to do that, we need to look backward just one time. So remember in session 1, we talked about the universal design for learning principle of multiple means of engagement. How do we get students to stay with us? How do we get them to get motivated? And then in session 2, we talked about multiple means of representation, doing +1 thinking. If there's one way for students to get information now, give them one more way. And in session 3, we talked about multiple means of action and expression. Do you remember Christine Carroll and Jennifer's examples of having students work in a garden in order to work on numeracy and literacy skills, having students working on content where they're able to write the essay, or they had the option to just record a quick audio clip and their students kind of came alive, providing options for physical action, expression and communication, executive function, keeping their time and helping them to manage their information. Now, in the post-session activity, we asked you what are some of the ways that you're giving your students choices for action and expression, and that was absolutely brilliant. And I want to put that up on the screen here. You should see our mentee here. Any general reflections you'd like to share? And people did. I've learned that all learners are different. They all learn different ways. When I look at my course, I can see that when it is very flexible and interactive, it may not suit the learning methodology for all. And people were also talking here, and let me get the scroll going here. There we are. There, it's moving. Our ABE services carrying out UDL principles in our literacy classes. We need to be exploring further other classes that we run, how to use it further in our IT and ESOL classes. And choices in the moment here. Images or body of text to understand the same body of work. I'm looking at how I deliver material, how to incorporate the PowerPoint Translate app so that people can see what I'm saying as well as hear it, and customizing questions to suit learners using tools and methods that people can relate to. This one was really powerful. This has been a super course. I've picked up many resources. I didn't realize how many different technological methods were available to help my teaching, which helps learners to continue with learning at ease. And there's a couple more here where people were talking about how they're going to give their students ways of interacting and ways of demonstrating their skills. That +1 message is so simple, but so clear. And if I implement it, it can have a positive impact. Another positive is the sense of community that you get from attending these sessions. It gives you such a boost of encouragement knowing you're not alone. And I love that because that's the note that we're hoping you will be sounding at your own centers, your own institutions, and among ourselves. So there's a bunch of us doing this FET Summer School, and our job today is to share some ways that people in FET have already created some communities around universal design for learning that you can join, and ways that you can connect with one another outside of those and start your own communities as well. So I'd like to turn it back over to Christine. She's going to talk a little bit about the scope of this session.
Thank you, Tom. And yes, it's been absolutely fantastic. So today, as we said, it's going to be a bit different. So we're going to be bringing on the co-author of the FET, UDL for FET handbook with Tom, and former executive director, of AHEAD, Anne Heelan. So she's going to be talking about the project that she was involved with previously with AHEAD, looking with the Cork Education Training Board to create an active inclusion network. And then we're going to be sending it over to yourselves. We're going to have the lovely Kerry Arthur from CDETB facilitating a group discussion where we're going to look at how can we build on this together, exactly like what that feedback gave, that we are not alone, and how can we continue to learn together. So UDL is a very, very conscious thing, and it's something like washing your hands, the COVID washing your hands. We have to remember and conscious of what we're doing all the time in order to keep it at the top of our minds, and hopefully we can learn from each other as well as part of this process and as we go forward. So I think we are going to introduce the lovely Anne Heelan. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Anne. If you'd like to come on and talk a little bit about the Active Inclusion Network.
Oh, hi everyone. I can't see you, but hopefully you can see me. And yes, I've worked in AHEAD for up to 20 years. But before that, I was a teacher, and I was also an authenticator for the Sitting Guilds. So I have experience of being in that classroom and working on my own and dealing with challenges as a new teacher and as somebody who's dealing with the problems like you're coming up with today, like those of diversity. So if you can move it on, thanks. Christy, yeah, after the AHEAD conference, we had a conversation corner with the FET staff. And what they were saying to us was, you know, look, we're all working on our own here, and we're all developing things on our own. So I was talking to Liz Moynihan, who's the principal of Kinsale FET, and we decided that we would set up an active inclusion network in Cork to support staff in Cork to improve, I suppose, their provision and their classes for all students, and including students with disabilities. So on the basis that we've said already, we're all working on our own, developing new initiatives, but if we put that together and work together, you get a hell of a lot more out of it. So what we did was we wanted to put it on a good structure. We didn't, you know, it just doesn't happen automatically. So we built the network on the sort of principles that were outlined at a previous AHEAD conference by Etienne Wagner, and also goes back to Reg Revens back in the 50s. So the principles that we built our network on were very clearly, number one, that it was participant-led. So it had to be relevant to the participants, the people that came to the meetings. It had to offer them something, and it had to come from what their challenges were. We were also looking for a commitment and passion to improve the experience of students in the classroom, and to kind of commit to that, I suppose, cycle of improvement. And we asked people to do that by sharing their expertise and their new initiatives and really what they felt. Now, sometimes that could have been difficult for people, because sometimes you get people who perhaps are on a part-time contract or whatever, a bit reluctant to share what they're doing. So that was a key part. I think the other principle was to try things out, to try the plus ones, to try something different, and to be prepared to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and learn from the warts and all. So it's to share the warts, not just all the successes, because often that's how we really learn. And again, the key thing of the network was to support each other. So we go to the next slide. Yeah, we actually had no real agenda. And I think it's important. We started with a blank wall, and we really just sent an invite out across the ETB in Cork to ask people, look, we're interested in improving the inclusion and diversity. Would you like to come along to talk about it and have a conversation? And we got a great attendance at the first meeting. We talked about UDL, but other than that, we just asked them, look, what are you proud of? What gets you up in the morning to go to your job? What do you like in your job? And then we asked them what the challenges were. And then we asked them what support they would like to get from a network that we're setting up. Next slide. Yeah, so we from that meeting, we got enough information and data to put together a really interesting program. So the program that we put up had two, I suppose, dimensions to it. It was to last a year, and we kind of decided to bring in external experts to talk about themes that had come up at the meeting. So we talked about what UDL was. We talked about how to create accessible documents to be inclusive to people who maybe needed to use IT. We looked at what the executive functioning was and how the brain worked in an educational context, how to light up the brain in a learning environment to maximize learning. And we got experts in to talk about mental health, because that was a big thing on the agenda, the increase of the number of students coming in, the whole range of mental health issues. And, you know, you've got experts here, you've got professional people who were good at their job and creating new initiatives, but they just really weren't sure whether those things they were introducing into their classroom were working or not. So part of this was to give them the confidence in what they were doing. And the other part of the network were that we had bi-monthly network meetings. And this was where people were really shared their information on topics that they chose. So they actually came together and talked about the needs assessment to get the reasonable accommodations right. And they together came up with a sort of a standardized approach over the year. They looked at that, and another big topic was assessment itself, and how flexible could you be with an assessment process that led to learning outcomes and had to fulfill the constraints of QQI, etc. So that was another big topic. And then models for assignment writing came up. And I think by just talking about these topics and listening to other people and what they were doing and how they felt about it, really reassured people that what they were doing was okay and gave them the confidence to continue and go back to the class and make other changes to what they were doing. So next slide. Yeah, so as a professional network, I think one of the things that came up was it was very important to meet up regularly. And what the group themselves said was that it had a big impact on the learners, that the learners in their classrooms were left with a much deeper understanding of their subjects and of the course content. So I think that was a really good outcome of it. It led to a lot, I think, of myth busting as well. We've mentioned already throughout the course about the learners themselves, about mental health, and about one of the big learning points, I think, was to break through the constraints that people put on themselves around the assessment, around the learning outcomes, and just, you know, okay, maybe to be a bit more comfortable to do things differently. So it really did change mindsets along the way and gave people more agency to be a lot more flexible in the work. So, you know, it very slowly but perceptibly changed the culture amongst all the people in the room, and I think gave them more consistency as well about what they were doing. So you want to move it on? One of the things that was very key to this network that was senior buy-in. We had a senior buy-in from John Fitzgibbons, who was one of the directors in Cork ETB. And at the very beginning, we went to him with a proposal for the network. And we gave him the structure and what we were going to do. And he agreed to fund it, which is really important. He funded the sessions themselves, the money for the speakers, but he also gave permission for people to leave their jobs, to leave their centres, to go to the network meetings. And they needed that for those meetings to be sustained. But I think what more than that, what he gave them was a sense of credibility, that they felt there was buy-in from the organisation. And I think people in the network felt that what they were doing meant something and would develop the organisation strategically in terms of inclusive practice, and that they were listened to because the research that they did around students with disabilities and the numbers, where they were, that all went back and informed strategic planning within Cork ETB as a whole. So I think it was really successful, and I think one of the signs of that is that Cork ETB then appointed one of the speakers from a previous session, Carol, to be the access officer in Cork ETB. So yeah.
And
sorry, can I just say that there is a lot of information if you want to read more about it on the AHEAD website.
And Anne, a quick question from the chat. On your screen, that's John Fitzgibbons from Cork ETB, and I think you were looking with, you were working with Liz Moynihan from Kinsale College too,
That's
correct?
right, yes. And Liz was one of the people who started up the network with me, as I said earlier. Yeah.
Grand. And Carol Neenan in the chat said, setting up a similar network in your own ETB would be fabulous. If we had a few throughout the country, we could all connect for the whole country. So, and people are putting in the chat that they'd love to learn from the AIN as a model. So I'm imagining people can get in touch with you and connect with you about it. And there's also an AIN page on the AHEAD website as well. And I think, yep, in fact, Dara just put that in there, put a video documentary about it into the chat. So splendid. Thank you very much, Anne, for sharing your ideas there. And it sounds like we've got some good chat going along these lines. And a couple of the comments in the chat make this an easy introduction, because I have the pleasure of introducing Carrie Archer, and she is one of the founders of the Professional Learning Network series. And she's going to talk a little bit about the PLN, Professional Learning Network. And she's also going to facilitate some breakout rooms where we're going to ask you to start sharing with one another in exactly the way you've been asking for just now. So it's my pleasure to turn it over to Carrie Archer.
Thanks so much, Thomas, and thanks, Anne. That was a great lead-in, and it was really encouraging when I found out about the Active Inclusion Network in Cork to know that a lot of the things that we've been doing in CDETB are quite similar, just maybe done a little bit differently. So I'm just going to have a bit of a chat today. So you'll see there that I am currently the Professional Development Coordinator in CDETB, but I only started a week pre-COVID, and before that I was a teacher in a College of Further Education in the city of Dublin, in Marino College, and I have been the student support coordinator there for about the last 7 to 8 years. So I have a huge interest in the area of ADL or UDL, and in working with students with additional needs. My own daughter has ADHD and ODD, and she's 21 but was out of mainstream education quite early. So this is a real passion of mine, to be able to work with teachers to help them to develop skills to be able to work with students like Sky. So I suppose that professionally and personally this means a huge amount to me. So our PLN started in about 2017. It was originally, those of you who would have seen the video would know that it was something that was done in conjunction with our psychological service. So they currently have groups that they work with on a consultative level for guidance counsellors in post-primary and in further ed. And then they have another group that they work with, the SEN coordinators in post-primary. But as we all know, in further ed, support services are very, very different in the way that they're run in further ed in comparison to, we don't have a National Council for Special Ed who kind of give us guidance on what we do, and very often we're responding to things locally and on the ground. So we started up this, originally it was a psychologist who was doing it, and then the psychological service felt that it would be much better to have somebody who's working in further ed, because they found that they were spending so much time trying to work out what happens in a PLC college that it was easier to have somebody on the ground do it. So I got the job as such because I had hounded Caroline, our chief psychologist, when I was doing my research. I did research on how further ed teachers can promote either the visibility or invisibility of LGBT learners, and I had hounded her for roughly 1.5 years. So she asked me to take over the group, and since then we've been having monthly meetings. It has been mainly teachers in post-leaving cert colleges, and those teachers who are working specifically within student support or working with learners with disabilities. So I do have a qualification in special ed, so we found that was it was useful to have somebody who had done that qualification to be able to help out maybe and to guide some of the things that were coming up in terms of discussions. So what we did was, this was put on our calendar of events, but it's the principals within colleges who decide who's coming to the PLN. So all of the principals in CDETB know that the that these sessions are on. We've run them monthly. So what we started to do was put them in different colleges. So it meant that maybe we were closer to other centres and easier for people to get to. Plus it gave us a sense of building that community across the CDETB, that people were visiting other colleges as well. And we tried to split the days that they were on and the times that they were on to make it more accessible for everybody, because we all know how difficult it is to get release. There's no such thing as a sub who's going to come in and take your class for that hour or the 2 hours that you're gone. And anybody who has ever been in Dublin City will know that it can take you 2 hours to get across the city to actually make it to one of these meetings. So that's definitely something that has been interesting. I know post-COVID that if these sessions are still running, they will be going online, and that will definitely make it much more accessible to everybody to be able to go to as well. So what we found was really this network is done so that we have a space. So it's an opportunity for us to reflect, to chat. It's done with coffee and scones. It's a completely informal space. It's about airing our difficulties, sharing experiences and the things that we found. So what we generally do is have our introductions, because we could have different people there. Each month it could be completely different people who are able to make it to the sessions. And what we will do is have a general chat at the very beginning. And then from the chat at the beginning, we would kind of, I suppose, roll into what people's growing concerns were, or what has happened since the last meeting. So I know Anne had also made reference to Etienne Wenger there. So really what it is, it's a learning partnership. So we're coming together, we're trying to learn from and with each other. So for us, the particular domain that we're looking at is being able to support our learners and to do that effectively. So with the group, we feel we got shared goals that we want to improve our own practice and the practice of the teachers in our colleges, as well as improve the experience for our learners. There's definitely a task cohesion, because very often we'll come up with the same things and the same concerns in our centres that we want to be able to address. There is a sense of interdependence, so we do have that sense that we're all trying to work together and collectively, and we use each other's practice as a learning, as a springboard. So when people come and say they've tried something out, then very often we'll go, oh yeah, that was a deadly idea. I'm going to go back to my centre and I'm going to give that a go. Or where it just gives us a chance to maybe share either individually or collectively what our challenges are. Our goals on the agenda kind of are quite organic, and they're things that if there's something that comes up, that I'll go and try to find or source somebody if we need an expert to come in who will help us do that. But I think what's really important is that professional learning, for it to work really well, you have to have a space to reflect. And that's what these networks do, is that it provides you with that 2 hours out where you're not with your students and you get an opportunity to think about what you're doing and to inform what we're doing. And as educators, we're so busy that like even from meetings, you'll have found that you're going straight from one into the next without a chance to digest what has happened. And maybe that 2 hours driving back across the city of Dublin to get back to your own centre is the space to reflect on the reflecting that you've done too. So I suppose the other thing is that it provides for emotional support. You know, that's something that's definitely something that we need to be able to do, is to find that. So we've had guest speakers in from DCU to do work with us on working with learners with autism. Collectively, we've worked on a needs assessment or a strengths assessment that we want to be able to do with our learners. We've looked at learner induction and taken ideas from each other about doing orientation for learners with support needs. Loads and loads of other things that we've done, and we've had DCU in to speak to us about the diploma in inclusive and special education that they run, and this is the first time. There's 5 teachers who are doing that course this year from Further Ed, and it's the highest number that they've ever had. So the challenges, there are loads of challenges to it. So getting time, space. So is it a priority? You know, very often you hear, I can't make it because I have to work with this one learner. And then actually what are the benefits of coming together to find out something that's going to support all of your learners for the sake of that 2 hours. So that's definitely something. And the priorities, you know, in terms of your centre and management, coming up with those ideas. So as to who's going to get released, when are they going to get released, are they going to get released? So I suppose what that does is it brings us into the next part, which is where we're going to go into some breakout rooms. And they're going to be quite focused. So like any good teacher, we're going to give you some tasks that we're going to do and some responsibilities. So we've got 3 questions that are after being popped up onto the screen there, that after listening to first of all, the last 2 weeks that we've had in this FET Summer School. But we want you to think now about the questions, ideas and connections that are on your minds. Where do you see opportunities to start small, create conversations with other people and to build with your colleagues? And then who are parts of your existing PLN? So chances are you've already got maybe very, very informal PLNs that you've got already and that you're going to be able to build on. But to be a little bit of a responsibility and accountability when you go into a breakout room, what we're going to do is when we go into the room, we're going to pop those Menti codes are going to come up, and there are 3 different codes for the 3 different Menti boards that we're going to use. And what we'd like is that in those breakout rooms that somebody would take responsibility for popping the collective thoughts of your group into the Menti code, so that we're going to be able to bring that back into the session and have a look at those and a little bit of a chat about them. So this is, I suppose, about you thinking, this is that grassroots piece, about you thinking about what can you do now after today, well, in a couple of weeks after you get your break from the summer school, to start building those connections yourself.
Welcome back. There's a few more people coming in, so hang out here with us for just a second. If you haven't had an opportunity to share your ideas onto those Mentees, please, the Menti codes are on your screen, so please take a couple of seconds while everybody's coming back into the main room and come back and share your ideas and thoughts, one of your takeaways in one of those Menti documents, so that we can have a quick share out as well. You'll hear me say this a couple of times, those of you who are already in the room, but if you've just come back into the main room, please share your thoughts in those Mentees if you didn't have an opportunity to do so during your conversations. We're going to put those up on the screen pretty quickly here.
"20 minutes can go so quickly when you've got so many ideas and thoughts and everything that you've had over the course of this 2 weeks. So you might be scrambling now on the mobile to get those in. So by the time we get to number 3, if you didn't get an opportunity to get those in, this is your chance.
No worries. And Chris says, Jesus, that was quick. Yes, 20 minutes goes by very fast when you have good ideas and good conversation with people. And if you're just coming back into the main room, go ahead and take a couple of seconds if you haven't had a chance to share one of your big takeaways or big ideas in one of those Menti codes. And we'll capture those and we'll take a look at those in just a couple of seconds. But while we're waiting here, we want to say thank you very much for bringing your ideas, your experiences to the front in those conversations that you've just had. And we're going to have, and Catherine says, I'd love to experience breakout rooms more to meet up. There's so much to share. There is, and we're actually going to share out in a more group way in just a couple of seconds here. So, oh, and here we have people saying, brilliant chat in room 11. Thanks for the opportunity. It was lovely to meet up in 15. And so, that's splendid, and this is totally the hospitality that we expect out of everybody in FET. People are saying thank you to room 8, room 18. All of your rooms were brilliant except for that one, and we know who you are, so don't worry about it.
It was poor room 28 where John ended up on his own, and there was nobody in the room with him when we sent him there. That was the one.
No, I wasn't going to call anybody out. There is only love and support on this call. So we've actually got some folks talking about the various rooms, so it was splendid. And now I'm going to switch over on my screen to the Menti results. And
great.
Let's take a couple of seconds here. This is question 1. And Carrie is going to be your guide and facilitator here. I'll just be voicing things out. But also, if you'd like to come on the live microphone, you can use the participants tool and raise your hand, and we'll acknowledge you and come on the live microphone if you want to share something that happened in your room or a good conversation that's happened. Or if you'd like to share some of the ideas that happened in your room in the chat feature. We'll be watching that, and our colleague Lorraine will be giving voice to those in the background. So Carrie, where would you like to start? Live conversation, Menti, chat rooms?
I think we'll start with the Menti, because people then might pop a few bits into the chat at the same time, Thomas, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, some of the ideas maybe that are coming through there is kind of what things are already in place. So I saw there we had, you know, this idea around community ed versus those more formal things in PLC colleges or further education, and the power of that as well, that informal piece. So looking at different ways of assessing. Yeah, I think that's been really powerful this week. The idea that a lot of what we've been doing does involve writing, but looking at things differently and looking at those opportunities that exist is really important. Room 30 there, so looking at the learner groups and this idea of teachers of different subjects advising each other, I think that's really powerful. A lot of the times we're looking for those support networks within our own disciplines, but actually if we look cross-disciplinary or transdisciplinary, what we can learn from each other and what you see somebody else doing, where if with a bit of manipulation that you can make that relevant to your own context as well and make that for your learners. So that idea of different subjects advising each other is really, really important.
Grand. And there's a couple of things in the chat that actually have bearing on this first question about ideas and connections. Barbara Galvin saying we had a question on QQI assessments, and she's posted the link to the guidance about the QQI assessments. So that's splendid to share that.
And just to come in, maybe, sorry, Thomas, on that my FET are actually running a session on UDL specifically around assessment. They're running it with AHEAD, Anne Heelan and Lorraine Gallagher are presenting at that as well. And so that little bit of backup, because FES do a lot of the support around external authentication, and we've been really conscious that that's something that's on the mind of educators. So it's worth getting onto the FES calendar and logging yourself on for that particular session as well.
Oh, excellent. We've got other things that you can work on to continue the ideas that we're doing here. Dipankar is also in the chat saying we created a WhatsApp group where learners, tutors, and the coordinators could communicate. It was brilliant for sharing resources and ideas. Cool deal. And we've got a bunch of people sharing main takeaways, and we're going to get to that in just a couple of seconds. So let's take a look at the Menti for question number 2. Where are there opportunities to start small, create conversations, build with colleagues? Carrie, do you want to?
Sure, I'll go with that middle one there in the pink. Yeah, that one there. Okay. So it started in some of the training centres, so particularly around TELMS. So that TELMS piece, it's technology enhanced learning, mentoring support. It's teachers mentoring each other. Due to COVID, there are more efforts being made to connect. And then we've got participants can advocate for further training. So looking at the FES calendar, lots of more engagement strategies are available now. And I think that that's something that we're all very conscious of, is that there have been a huge amount of opportunities created through COVID, where those classroom doors have definitely been knocked down, because we need to support each other. So it seems that as an admin support for tutors, I could create a formal PLN for tutors to come together regularly. It shouldn't be up to them to organise their own networks. It should be our responsibility. So obviously, if you've got a role where you can do that and you can facilitate that, it's a really good place of privilege for you to be in, and to see that as an opportunity, and to support your staff in being able to do that. So I think that's, whoever put that in, I think that's really important as well.
That's grand. And there was actually a bit in the chat while we were all having conversation and you were describing your professional learning network. Somebody said the people who need the most outreach are the part-time instructors, and helping those part-time people to feel like they are a part of rather than apart from. That's going to open a lot of doors and be a big driver for everybody here.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that we have to look at. And, you know, Thomas, I think that that's even something with moving online and having digital communities, that might be something different. Even having a Microsoft Teams group can be a community of practice, you know, so people can dip in and out at their own time. And I think that's been really important. To maintain new platforms we've been using when we go back to face-to-face, so Teams, they're perfect classroom, making spaces for student conversations as well. And I think we all acknowledge that social emotional piece is going to be hugely important for our learners as they return. They've been out of centres for 6 months now. So, and that is an opportunity. These digital learning platforms have provided us with opportunities. We had no option but to get over the fear of using them. So now let's use them for collaborating as well as just for supporting students.
Splendid. And
Nice.
there was a lot of feedback on that third question too. Who are in your existing PLNs, whether they're formal or informal? So here's one about part-timers.
Again, then informal if you're part-time, just people you bump into, direct contact, no private meeting place. Yeah, and maybe from this is something that we can all start to push from the ground up, and trying to ask, where can we have this space for us to be able to do this as well?
And there's actually a piece in the chat on this question from Ross. The problem is that networking, the management don't always value it enough. Part-time teachers don't always get paid to attend if it's extra on top of their teaching. That's quite true, and that's an area for advocacy and conversation as well.
Yeah.
And let me take a look here. Oh, I love this one here.
Okay, so other teachers are there, but we need somebody to organise the professional development and professional learning networks with other teachers and support networks. We need leadership to step up and offer it up, and pay us to come together as an organisation. And you know, these things, and Etienne Wenger would very much advocate for that while you've got bottom-up approaches, you need to have top-down as well, and have those conversation pieces in the middle. So, yeah, I agree. I can't disagree with that.
And an interesting one as well about if you're in the night course, you know, a night class, you might not even see the tutor, another tutor at all. If you're doing a night course, could be an almost empty building. So, you know.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the big things that we'll talk about when we talk about takeaways here in a couple of seconds, is that time and space were barriers for all of us. Having a community to share inclusive and good teaching practices and design practices. But now we're all getting to be Zoom professionals, and we're all having these groups that can meet outside of time and space boundaries. So it's a wonderful thing to do. I'm going to switch back over here and say thank you very much. We wanted everybody to share your thoughts. We hope that breakout session was productive for you. We hope you made a couple of new friends and colleagues. And I want to say thank you very much to Carrie Archer for facilitating and for her expertise in sharing about her professional learning network as well. So I'm going to do the slow clap here on my microphone. And if you want to say thank you to Carrie, the chat is a wonderful place to do that. And I'd like to turn it over to Anne Heelan for just a second. She's got some tips about how you can become a secret, sneaky evangelist for UDL at your place.
Yes, thank you, Tom. But I think the main thing is just we can all talk. We all have colleagues, and we need to just start asking people questions and ask them, would they like to meet up? It could be informally over coffee. It could be at lunchtime. And you can get started that way and then maybe set it up more formally. And I think the main thing would be to have a goal, have a topic or a question that you want to deal with. It could be around assessment, it could be around using technology, or as we all are at the moment, how you use Zoom or Teams to be more effective. You can find out if there are meetings. Some groups have professional structured groups, but others don't, like many teachers don't. But there may be meetings going on now, Carrie's setting them up in Dublin, and maybe there's other ones setting up in other ETBs. But I think also we can all maybe advocate and lobby senior staff to set up a meeting. I know that's what we did in Cork, that you can talk to colleagues, put something together, look at the issues that you might tackle as a network, and send it up the line to the senior colleagues to look for support, because they have other jobs, they may be not thinking about this. But if it's laid out in front of them that all they need are A and B to do this, well, they can see the advantage of it. So I think it's one of the things that's important is to agree a goal. While they can be informal, I think you need to know what you're actually tackling. And if it's a small area, you can time bound it as well. So we'll have 2 meetings to look at this area, or it could be longer. So, but I think the main thing is to get sharing and collaborating, and talking and discussing with your colleagues. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we've actually got a question in the chat. Can you, from somebody who says, are there more places on UDL or courses we can take or things like that? It's like they know what's coming next, because
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this over to our colleagues, Christine, and she's going to introduce Trevor Boland to talk a little bit about some more ways that you can interact and get skilled.
Yes, so I'm just going to quickly cover, so just before Trevor comes on, I know we're all dying to hear more about the UDL badge that he'll be running very soon. But there's going to be a survey about the sessions. We'd love to hear from you. That's going to be on and sent to you probably in the next half an hour. So please, if you can, just give us your feedback. We're also looking for some suggestions. And if you want anything, from us in the next while in terms of training, my colleagues Trevor and Lorraine are looking at developing membership training for later on in the year. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Trevor Boland, the e-learning officer and e-learning and digital officer in AHEAD.
Hello everyone, great to be here. So I'm going to chat very quickly about the UDL course. So over this, you've developed a hunger for UDL. So we're serving a main course of a course to appease your hunger for even more UDL activities. So just to fill you in quickly with the brief information, registration for this course will happen on August 17th. So we'll be putting that on the AHEAD website and making that open in an Eventbrite link. And you have then until the August 17th, September 17th to register. And there are going to be potentially a lot of places. So this is planned to be one of the largest rollouts of the UDL badge. So we're anticipating maybe up to 500 places on the course, which is a big step up from us, as we are in the past, we would have had maybe about 30 places. So because that hunger is like increasing within like the FET sector, we are kind of evolving that to include many new possibilities. So in the AHEAD webpage, there's a webpage now specifically for FET staff, which is being displayed on the screen. And that page, if you go through it, it's easy to find on the AHEAD homepage. There's a link on the new section just on the right hand side, and that'll take you to this FET page, and that'll go through how to register, when it'll happen, what's involved in the course. So it's a 10-week course. It involves 2.5 hours worth every week, and then there's 3 modules. There's 1 UDL assignment, which is a redesign of an aspect of your course, or a full redesign of your course. So you can make it as large or small, the UDL redesign, as you want. And then specifically, just draw your attention to something on the web page, is that there's a link to, thank you very much, to a link called Join Expression of Interest List, which will take you to a web page in the Teaching and Learning Forum, and there you can add your name and an email address to that web page, and that will find its way back to me, so then we will be able to cooperate. So in the meantime, feel free to read the webpage. It's got all the information about the content of the course and the expectation of the course. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me at trevor.boland@ahead.ie. So thank you very much. Okay.
All right, Trevor.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And it's that time when we're actually going to end. And if you would, let's take 1 minute. What is your one biggest thing that you're going to bring back into your center, your role, your work from the entire 4 sessions? What's your one biggest thing? Just post that in the chat real quick. We'll read out a few of them, and then we'll wrap up with I was going to say blessing. I'm used to religious services, so pardon me about that. But it's the right word. We're going to wrap up with a blessing from our colleagues at AHEAD, and people are talking about +1, choices make a difference, ability to have different methods of assessing learners. Lots of, somebody says, reach everyone, teach everyone, be prepared to be flexible, the value of using UDL, becoming an evangelist for UDL. Thank you very much for echoing that. Tutors can do a lot of stuff, include multiple means of assessment, embracing change, starting small, setting up a professional learning network, being inclusive. Everyone can learn, asking my learners what is useful for them. Don't be afraid to try different things. Looking for my part-time PLN, different methods for assessment, and a renewed and refreshed idea to make classes inclusive and engaged. And it can be small and easy. It doesn't have to be complex. And from Carrie Archer, you got the last word today, advocate. Make UDL part of your everyday vocabulary. So we want to say thank you to everybody. You have made this an engaging and useful and fun session for all of us. And I'd like to turn it over to Christine, who's going to wrap us up and say thanks to everybody. Before we do that,
say thank you, if that's okay.
Yep.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, Dara. And if you're on Twitter, just tell us that you commit to UDL. Use hashtag UDL, use Ahead Ireland's handle, find out the handle for your center so they know you're an advocate, and use the hashtags #ThisIsFET and hashtag UDL for FET. And you'll see this screen when we send out the slides later too. So take a couple of minutes. Dara, take it away.
Thanks, Tom. I'll keep this short. Tom has been a real time tyrant throughout these 4 sessions for us, keeping us to exactly 1 hour. But Tom, Irish time has beaten you today, finally. So I'll keep it as short as possible. Yeah, just to say, first of all, what a fun bloody few days that was. I really enjoyed every single session, and I just thought the buzz in the virtual room, and I suppose the whole idea of the practitioners in the room really driving the conversation and driving the sessions forward was just a really exciting dynamic. So firstly, a huge thanks to Solus and to ETBI for their commitment to UD and UDL and their support from an ahead perspective on the UDL for FET project. I was so delighted to see in the FET strategy released last week that commitment to consistent learner support underpinned by universal design. Secondly, massive thank you to Tom, yourself, Tom Tobin, to Christine Hines from Ahead, and to Anne Heaton for designing these sessions so expertly, and to all of the Ahead staff who supported and helped to make this happen, to Trevor and Lorraine in particular. Thank you to all the wonderful FET practitioners who joined us, to Kerry, and to all the wonderful practitioners who joined us in the other sessions, really for showing us that, you know, by starting small, UDL is real, it's alive in FET already, and it's very achievable, and to get everybody else moving on that journey with us. And last but not least, most definitely not least, I want to thank all of you in the room, all the participants, for coming with us and sticking with us over these 4 sessions. Your engagement with us, your commitment to reflecting on your own practice and to seek ways which you can reach all of your learners. I suppose that's really been the driving force behind these sessions, and bringing those voices to the fore has been really exciting for us. So I hope you continue to connect with us as an organisation, to continue, as Tom said in session 1 and again today, to be sneaky UDL evangelists, to help us kind of plant those seeds and continue to spread the message. And I suppose with that, we'd like to close the curtain and say enjoy the rest of your summer, and take care and stay safe. And thanks again for joining us.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you.